Well, good morning, and welcome to the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation's event celebrating Manufacturing USA, 10 years of American innovation. I'm Stephen Ezel, the Vice President for Global Innovation Policy at ITIF, and it's a pleasure to have you with us this morning. You know, 2012 feels like only yesterday when my erstwhile colleague David Hart, ITIF President Rob Atkinson, and I released a report titled Why America Needs a National Network for Manufacturing Innovation. That laid out the intellectual and economic rationales for why America needed to establish a set of institutes of manufacturing innovation that would spur the development of advanced manufacturing process and product technologies for the U.S. economy. In August of that year, the Department of Defense would help stand up the National Additive Manufacturing Innovation Institute, Now America Makes. And in 2014, 10 years ago, Congress passed RAMI, the Revitalize American Manufacturing and Innovation Act, into law, which gave congressional authorization to the Advanced Manufacturing National Program Office to start and to expand the network of institutes. David Hart would go on to play a leading role in Obama's Office of Science and Technology Policy, setting up the network, which has since grown into 17 vitally important and impactful centers of U.S. manufacturing excellence, with several more on the way, as we'll hear. And today we're going to hear about how the institutes are advancing manufacturing digitalization, ensuring cybersecurity, enabling lightweight energy-efficient manufacturing, advancing innovation in biologics and biosimilars, and making a host of other breakthroughs across areas like robotics, photonics, biomaterials, et cetera. So I'm going to introduce our incredible panel in just a moment. But briefly, before I do, I want to really emphasize why Manufacturing USA's work is so important and why it's critical that policymakers continue to aggressively advance policies to advance U.S. manufacturing. Because if our slides are working, our slides are working. Okay. So the Manufacturing USA Institutes have made incredible progress, but there's more work to be done to revitalize America's manufacturing economy. This chart examines U.S. labor manufacturing productivity across two decadal periods, 2014 to 2013 and 2014 to 2023. As you can see, in the previous period, U.S. labor manufacturing productivity increased by 20%. But since 2014, it's actually fallen by 5%. And across 21 of the top line manufacturing subsectors, we experienced positive labor productivity growth in only 5 of those sectors. When we look at manufacturing's contribution to our economy as a share of value added, the US at just over 10% is still well behind peer countries like Germany, Japan, Korea, where it's at or close to 20%. I know we're in a services-oriented post-industrial economy. That is true. There is a secular shift from manufacturing to services. That said, there is absolutely no reason whatsoever why manufacturing should not contribute at least 16 to 18% of US GDP. And I think more concerningly, in 2023, we released a report called the Hamilton Index. And what this report did for 40 nations and 10 advanced technology industries, such as pharmaceuticals, motor vehicles, aerospace, machinery and equipment, electrical equipment, metals, et cetera. We looked at these industries' location quotients, which compared these industries' contribution to a nation's economy compared to these industries' contribution to the global economy. So if, for instance, in the pharmaceutical sector, America has an LQ of 1, this means that our pharmaceutical sector contributes as much to the US economy as it does to the global economy. Okay, so when we ran the numbers for these 10 industries across 40 countries, we saw that China has an LQ in advanced industries of 1.47, and the United States just 0.87. What this means is that China is 70% more specialized in advanced industries than the United States is. And to match China's specialization, US output in these 10 industries would have to increase by 69%, or $1.5 trillion. And across these 10 industries, there were only 3 in which they contributed more to the US economy than they contributed to the global economy. And if you look at motor vehicles, which is a very strong sector for the American economy, of course, it still only has an LQ of 0.57, which means that America's motor vehicle sector contributes 57% as much to the US economy as it does to the global economy on average. And lastly, when we look at countries' market share across these industries, we can see that China, which started with a collective market share of less than 5% in 1995, has now reached an aggregate 25% market share, while the US has experienced a decline. So we released earlier this year a report called a Techno-Economic Framework for the Next Administration, which proposes 82 different policy recommendations we would encourage Congress and the next administration to adopt. In particular, we need to expand Manufacturing USA and ensure very strong connectivity to the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program. You know, it's staggering when we look across the OECD that the United States, the country which invented the R&D tax credit in 1983 and for long had the world's most generous R&D tax credit, now has just the 24th most generous R&D tax credit out of 34 OECD countries, and China has a 2.7 times more generous corporate R&D tax credit. We have to increase the generosity of the US credit. We think one of the most impactful things of the CHIPS Act was the investment tax credit, the 25% flat ITC. We would call for Congress establishing a 7-year, 25% investment tax credit for US companies building new facilities in advanced manufacturing industries. We need to restore first-year expensing for capital equipment and establish a national industrial development bank to provide sources of kind of slow patient capital for US manufacturers. Okay, with that ITIF commercial over, and I'm now going to introduce and turn it over to our wonderful panel. We're going to start with Mike Molnar. Mike is the founding director at the Advanced Manufacturing National Program Office at NIST, where he leads the interagency team responsible for the Manufacturing USA program and directs the NIST Office of Advanced Manufacturing. Mike also co-chairs the National Science and Technology Council's Subcommittee on Advanced Manufacturing and oversees the National Strategic Plan for Advanced Manufacturing. Prior to his federal service, Mike had spent 25 years at Cummins, leading manufacturing and tech development programs. Next, delighted to have with us Joe Steele. Joe is the Vice President for Communications and Legislative Affairs at LIFT, Levitt Composites. Joe manages relationships with key legislative stakeholders, policymakers, and media. He previously led public affairs for a telecommunications company, and he started his career as a reporter before transitioning to politics and worked on communications for a U.S. Senate campaign there in Michigan. After Mike, we will have Bernardino Barada, the CEO of MXD, formerly known as the Manufacturing Digitalization and Innovation Institute. Bernardino collaborates with the U.S. Department of Defense and 300-member ecosystem to boost U.S. manufacturing, competitiveness, and national security. He previously served as Vice President of Projects and Engineering and Senior Director of Technology Strategy at MXD. After a focus on kind of hardcore manufacturing sectors, we're going to turn to the biotech industry, but still manufacturing, of course, with Kelvin Lee. Kelvin is director of the NIMBLE, the National Institute for Innovation in Manufacturing Biopharmaceuticals, where they're doing incredible work in advancing innovation in U.S. biopharmaceutical manufacturing. Kelvin also serves as the Giller Professor of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering at the University of Delaware and was formerly director of the Delaware Biotechnology Institute and has taught at Cornell. After Kelvin, delighted to have with us Carol Thomas. Carol is a member of ITIF's board, actually, but she's a recognized expert in partnership development and change management. She was former acting associate director for innovation and industry services at NIST and director of the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program. And she previously served as associate administrator for the Small Business Administration's Small Business Development Centers. Last but not least, to provide a kind of a corporate partner perspective on working with these institutes, we have Greg Bowman He is Senior Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer for Siemens Government Technology, where he leads their strategic growth efforts. Before joining Siemens Government Tech, he had served in the U.S. Army for 25 years in roles focusing on strategic military law and policy. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to our great panelists. Let me know before I do that we're going to take questions after presentations. If you're online, you can submit questions via the Slido app, which is the bottom of the webpage. We have a banner at the back where we want all of you to sign your name. We're going to have the kind of the poster framed, and it's going to be a kind of a joint celebration of the great 10 years of manufacturing USA. And lastly, after we wrap it up, we're going to take a group photo. So when we're all done, stick around. We'll just turn around and get a group shot. I think it'll be a great way to mark this event for posterity. So thank you. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
And you may need just to click forward.
Oh, I appreciate that. And if that sounds, signing something that sounds a bit melodramatic, I have a twinge of history here because 10 years, we had a congressional event. We had the four key sponsors in the House and the Senate and the Secretary of Commerce here. And at that, we had a poster board signed, and that's been in our conference room ever since. And it really is a reminder here that these things do take time. We get focused on the immediate, focused on the projects. What I'd like to ask you is, I'm just going to throw up a few slides here, but it's not about the projects. It's not about the activities today. It's about the larger context of Manufacturing USA. This is a most unusual slide as well, because you see 9 different agency logos. We started because of the PCAS, the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, that we need a whole of government effort to partner with industry and academia. That was our charge. And I want to thank Stephen and Rob Atkinson for convening this. And you're very right. ITIF was one of those very strong voices. We basically crowdsourced 12 years ago. We crowdsourced all of the best ideas. And the surprise to so many people was when we started the first pilot institute of Now America Makes, that we got so much right. So this is really the story of what we are focused on. Just a few slides. Really, we are still the envy of the planet for invention and discovery. But everyone has focused, the other countries, and in particular, our competitor countries, realizing this is great that China has built up their manufacturing sector. It is their way to lift their people's standard of living out of poverty. That's great. But what they are really focused on is now taking over leadership. And if you're familiar with the Made in China 2025 initiative, the cornerstone of that, if you dig deep down into it, it is they want to lead in 10 different industry sectors globally. And to do that, they've analyzed what are those technological barriers. And they've launched a Manufacturing Innovation Institute for each one of those. They started after studying us. Every one of our events, we'd have guests from China, and imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Well, I can share right now, they've stopped talking about it, but they haven't stopped doing it. They've made impressive progress, and their goal was 40 institutes by 2025. They have at least 30 very large institutes. So if you're wondering, are we doing something that is, I wish I was Stephen, but we've really proven the model, and we are really, that they are emulating it. But I benchmarked them right before COVID. In fact, I was in Wuhan, China in October, visiting their DMDII. No kidding. They named it the same thing as DMDII then in Chicago. It was huge. It was enormous. And it really clicked for me that what they're trying to do is build clusters and hubs. And that was their focus, was our focus here, which is invention, discovery, great, but scaling up. So our institutes are on that 4 to 7, still pre-competitive. This is the bigger picture. The bigger picture. I think these folks are heroes. LIFT, MXD, NIMBLE, what they're doing is they're convening. Don't think of an institute as a noun. Don't think of the project as the principle. Think of this as a verb of convening industry and academia to work on collaborative projects. Many of those projects aren't at the institute. They're at a university or an industry test bed, wherever it is. But this chart is really meant to show that the technology is important. Yay. But the other side of it, for these emerging technologies, the Department of Commerce, we've heard every single year for the past 30 years that the number one issue for U.S. manufacturers is a trained workforce. So the workforce training, not to develop it, not to give it, but to develop it with the universities and the community colleges, they also aren't focused on the here and now. You got to do the here and now. If you don't do that, you're not going to have small and medium-sized companies work on projects. But if they only stop there, it's the tactical side. And that's the beauty of an institute, is that they have long-term technology roadmaps to really achieve those amazing things. And then finally, the co-investment. The goal of that is to really convene an ecosystem. And so we have 4 goals of Manufacturing USA. We are about to release the next triennial strategic plan, but these are the same overarching goals. It's U.S. competitiveness. It's not a matter of manufacturing and services. In fact, most of the best really high impact service jobs are information jobs or technology jobs that are because of manufacturing, and in particular, advanced manufacturing. Goal is transitioning these technologies, scalable, cost effective. We want to invent it here, we want to make it here, and we want to sell it everywhere. Goal 3 is the workforce, and if we do all of those right, those are the those are the ecosystems. It's really difficult for a company to be doing things all by themselves. They really need the supply chain, they need the ecosystem, and that's what we want to have here. Once you get it, you talk to economists, they tell you about the hubs, they get sticky. And so visit the institutes, visit Kelvin, what they're doing at the STAR campus. I mean, if you talk to Senator Coons, chances are just the twinkle in his eye, he'll start talking about a renaissance in Newark, Delaware, of what happened when the Chrysler plant, arsenal of democracy, important in World War II. But when that Chrysler plant closed, it was a depression. And now on that, it's really building a renaissance in advanced manufacturing. Today, we have 17 institutes. All of these have a great story to tell. You're going to hear a bit about these from the 3 institutes. But in particular, 10 years ago, we announced LIFT and now MXD. This was done at the White House. This is how important it was to convene, and it wasn't a political thing. This was really to get attention that we're doing something different, and it really is industry-led partnership. So where are we right now? In addition to those 17, NIST is about to launch 2 new institutes. One of them is part of the CHIPS initiative on digital twins for semiconductor manufacturing. We're on track to announce that next month, and this is very exciting. We are moving to the second stage for the AI for resilient manufacturing. So in a nutshell, this is where we're at. It's over 2,900 members. What's a member? A member is a university, a member is a company, a member is a great company like Siemens USA with well over 50,000 US employees. They are integral with institutes because they see it as part of their R&D initiative. So the surprise to us when we did a third-party assessment was the value that the connections happening at an institute of a small or a startup rubbing shoulders with a large tier 1 or OEM. We found that they were doing as many things outside of the institute, outside of the projects, as they were inside. So it's forging connections. It's creating a hub all around it. So it's not the 920 plus active projects in the pipeline. Actually, it is. Those are really cool projects. And my favorite annual report is the highlights that every institute highlights. These are the really best things that we have. But it's what I want to call attention here is the big picture, which is we've created a portfolio, we have created connections, and the surprise to many of us is that a member is a community college, a university. We have every Every major university with any manufacturing program is a member of a Manufacturing USA Institute. We have members in all 50 states and Puerto Rico. Surprise to us, there is one university, I won't if you say one, then the others get, why didn't you make? So I'll just say there's one university, 17 institutes, they are active members of 14, and they're a smaller university. And I visited them and said, why? And they said, this is our value proposition. This is not only the way that we are getting funding on applied research, we know that this is going to go into production, it's very cool, but it is our way to connect our students, even to our undergrads, to the needs of industry, the voice of industry. So they see it, 14 institutes. They see that as their R&D activity for the benefit of their undergrad and graduate program. So at a snapshot, over 539 million, the majority of that is non-federal, and that's remarkable. Fraunhofer, the gold standard, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Okay, Catapult, 1/3. We are statutorily, we are at least at 50-50. We are running at a 3-to-1 co-investment of non-federal to fellow. That is not what we focus on, but that's a good indicator that we are providing value to industry to participate. So wrapping up, my last slide here is I mentioned my favorite report that we do is just showing what each institute wants to highlight, what they've done in the last. What we've done is we've asked the institutes over your entire history, look back over the 10 years. What are the game changers that you've done? And fresh on the web, the pixels are still drying, I'm told, is we have 10 Manufacturing USA 10th anniversary special website. It's the 10 impact areas over 10 years. Go into these areas, scaling and onshoring emerging technologies. There's a couple of stories there, but those are the, shall we say, the greatest hits of Manufacturing USA. And with that, I'm really pleased to kick this off because the stars of the show are institute leaders, my good friend and colleague, Carol Thomas, because the other side of this is the unique in our planet, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership National Network. We have created over 10 years the Manufacturing USA Network and MEP National Network. They're joined at the hip, but I think we close out with, I'm kind of biased as a guy from industry, the voice of industry of why this really, really matters. So thank you so much.
Oh, okay. So I don't pose as Mike up
Mike.
here. Don't want to confuse our online. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Joe Steele. I'm the Vice President of Communications and Legislative Affairs with LIFT. You give a communications guy an opportunity to talk and a legislative affairs guy an opportunity to talk in Washington, D.C. You might have to pull me off the podium after a little while. But I appreciate the opportunity, appreciate the chance to be here with our colleagues from our fellow institutes, our supporters from the government, our supporters from the IITF who, got this ball rolling years and years ago, and all of you in the room. We cannot do what we do without partnerships, and it takes at every level, from government, from industry, from academia, all levels of government, from federal, state, local. So thank you all for joining us here today. As Mike mentioned, LIFT has turned 10 years old this year. So I'll talk a little bit about our evolution and how we got to where we are today, where we think we might go in the future, and then we'll hit on some of our success stories as we go forward as well. So LIFT is the Advanced Materials Manufacturing Innovation Institute, and we focus on advanced materials, manufacturing processes, systems engineering, and talent development. So what that means for me as a non-engineer, apologize to the engineers in the room, but what that means to me is that we work with the Department of Defense, we work with industry, work with other entities who have visions of what they want to make in the future. We then work collaboratively with them to understand how to make it and what to make it out of. As manufacturing processes evolve, the advent of new materials come into the fore, we need to make sure we know what those materials can do and if they can achieve the purpose that they're intended to do. So you see our Detroit facility. We are based in the Motor City. I was teasing, I think it was Carol earlier today. She said she came to the ribbon cutting. I said, which one? We've had a couple at our facility. We were born, as you know, in 2014. We actually moved into that building in 2015, and really is a success story in terms of what a public-private partnership can do. This building was vacant for about a decade, maybe a dozen years before we moved into it. Our first executive director came from Columbus, Ohio. Used to tell me that the first time he saw that building, he just wanted to keep driving back to Ohio because it was empty and you know, there was some creative artwork on the walls and there were, you know, trees growing in places you shouldn't have trees growing. But now we've turned it into a world-class advanced manufacturing facility. And I know some folks were there at our first ribbon cutting, which was in 2015 when we moved into that building. But we had about 85,000 square feet of empty space, which we filled up in 2016 and 2017 and held another ribbon cutting in 2017, where we opened up our high bay, where we have $50 million worth of equipment that we can utilize on the programs that we have, and our members can come and utilize the equipment we have to help accelerate their technologies moving forward. And then in 2019, we opened up a learning lab, which gave our students an opportunity to come to our facility and not only have eyes on what advanced manufacturing looks like in the year 2024, but participate in some of the curriculum that we've helped develop with the partnerships that we have in the room. And then not pictured here is, you know, 2021, I think it was, when Siemens came in and built one of their Explorer centers in our facility, which was a tremendous investment because they saw what was going on. So we appreciate our industry partners doing that. And then also not pictured here is our evolution, understanding that we cannot do everything within our four walls in Detroit, but where else in the country can we have a similar impact what we've done in Detroit? And so earlier this year, we opened up a facility in Puerto Rico where we think we can have a similar impact. So taking the National Advanced Manufacturing Innovation Institute and really truly putting meaning behind that. This is what we say we do in terms of our, as Mike said, it's not a noun or it's a living, breathing thing, an institute. I won't go through all of these, but you know, as nonprofits, we're trusted advisors. We're tasked with accelerating technology. We like to call our facility our showcase and our sandbox because we are showcasing the future of advanced manufacturing. It's always an evolution. My chief technology officer always laughs at me because we have a virtual tour. You can walk through our facility, you know, online, but it's always out of date because he's always moving things around and always bringing in new pieces of equipment and new partnerships and new things like that. So I give up. We're a connector and a convener, as mentioned, bringing all these folks together from industry, academia, and government, and then developing talent and really our government partners. So we can't do what we do without our friends at NIST, without our friends at the Department of Defense, and other areas of the federal government. So why do we need an Advanced Materials Manufacturing Innovation Institute? Well, because of the impact it can have on the economy, to the tune of about $270 billion. But importantly, for the Department of Defense, understanding these materials and giving our warfighter the best materials they can have, it can help them achieve their mission more efficiently, more effectively, and more importantly, come home safely. And that is really at the top of mind with all of the work that we do. This is a big slide. I'm gonna kind of glaze over it, but this is our technology program on one slide. I just want you to look at the top, which is design, build, and test. We take materials, we design materials, design the process, build them, and then test them and make sure that they are fit for purpose at the end of the day. Core to that is advanced materials manufacturing process, but we really start on the digital side with our modeling and simulation, and then hopefully have a customer at the end of the day we can move those materials towards. On the talent side of the house, which we lovingly call Learning Innovations for Tomorrow, we've evolved to where we're running across the student continuum with programming, starting with middle school students to high school students through our Ignite Mastering Manufacturing curriculum, our adult learners who need jobs and want to upskill, reskill, jobs that are available right now here today, giving them an opportunity through our Operation Next program, which gives them, certification opportunities in welding and CNC, industrial technology maintenance, and robotics. So we're tackling the challenges of today with the tremendous skills gap that exists, with over 2 million jobs going unfilled over the next handful of years because of retirements and folks not moving into advanced manufacturing, but also looking towards the future by going down to high schools and to middle schools, giving them some exposure, and hey, this is what advanced manufacturing looks like. Isn't it awesome? So come take a look at it and do that. All of that in our learning lab. So how have we evolved over the last decade? Well, we have this facility that you see there, 100,000 square feet, just about a mile away from downtown Detroit, the heart of American manufacturing. I mentioned the equipment that we have there, but we bring about 7,500 visitors to that facility every year to see what we're doing, to discuss what the future looks like, discuss the needs of advanced manufacturing. Where do we need to go from a technology and talent perspective? But if you broaden that out and look at our ecosystem, we've got about 5 million square feet of active space around the nation. Again, we can't do all things by ourselves. So it takes partnerships with our ecosystem, takes partnerships with our industry and academic members to achieve what we want to achieve. At any given time, we've got about 30 different technology programs that are going on, which means we are helping fund and support thousands of engineers and technicians around the country. We are, as the Advanced Materials Manufacturing Innovation Institute, we are, knee deep, elbow deep, maybe neck deep in hypersonics materials development, which we know is the top priority for the Department of Defense. We know we need to make transformational changes as our adversaries around the world are not sitting around waiting for us to catch up. We need to catch up on our own and take these big swings and take these big opportunities. And so that's why we are that's just one example of some of the projects some of the success stories I hope we get through in the conversation. On the talent side of the house, operated out of Detroit, but we've got talent operations in about 30 different states right now through our Ignite program, through our Operation Next program. All of those are started out of our shop in Detroit, but then as a National Manufacturing Innovation Institute to roll those out across the nation. So we've had 4,000 people at any given time learning from us in some way, shape, or form, whether they be middle schoolers or, like I said, adult learners trying to earn their next career. And finally, as I mentioned, we are achieving our national mandate by looking outward into Puerto Rico. Florida are the top two in terms of next locations of where we want to go. So this is an evolution. As being the third, my friend Barandino gets to claim second in terms of births of institutes, twins, but they were born first. We've been at this for 10 years, and it's been there's been ups and downs. There's been challenges. There's been twists and turns that we couldn't imagine as a true startup organization. As I mentioned, the building was vacant, and now it is a world-class advanced manufacturing facility that we hope is moving the needle. We think is moving the needle for the industry. I'll mention a couple of. I mentioned Ignite. I mentioned Operation Next. A couple of the other success stories that you would see come around our facility. Invite you to come back. But saving warfighter lives. I mentioned developing the materials, giving the materials they need to be safer and return home. We've had a project that reduced the rollovers of Humvees that is now being implemented around the country around the world with the industry partner that was involved, that was injuring and killing too many of our warfighters. We've made shipbuilding more efficient and effective for the major shipbuilders around the country, and we're helping the Department of Defense achieve their mission in terms of making things go really, really fast. And out of hypersonics materials and looking to actually build more testing capability for those materials because we are behind. So that is kind of the evolution of where we've gotten to where we are. Appreciate the opportunity and looking forward to learn a little bit more about some of the other institutes and sharing some more of our success stories going forward. So thank you.
I'll share a joke about the timing. So we used to be called the Digital Manufacturing and Design Innovation Institute. So we were announced on the same day at the White House when D comes before. Actually, Almi was your original name, correct?
It's still our nonprofit name.
So
Yeah.
I guess
yeah.
I like this more because we were announced right before in the same sentence.
Right. Exactly.
We like to say we're like the twins that we're, I'm the 2-minute older brother. But, so we had a technical difficulty. We're going to switch. So first off, good morning, everyone. I'm Verdi Nobrado, the CEO. Thank you to ITF, to my fellow panelists, to all of you for taking time to have these important conversations. As Stephen said, really, we've had incredible growth in the last 10 years, but there's so much more we need to do. So I'll give you an update about MXD, who we are, what we do. Thank you so much. But forgive me. All right, I will stand behind the podium. I hate standing behind podiums, but all right. Which is the forward? Okay. So we are the Digital Manufacturing and Cybersecurity Institute. We're sponsored by the Department of Defense. The way I like to explain what we do is if you think about data, information throughout the product lifecycle, from design to producing it in a factory, the supply chain, sustaining it in the field, and ultimately end of life, how do you generate data, aggregate it, analyze it to make smarter decisions, and then make sure that throughout that process, you're keeping that data secure? So that's where we live as MXD and how we operate. As Mike mentioned, convening is the strength of, I think, all of the institutes, 300 plus members in our ecosystem. When we bring them together, innovation happens by them talking to each other. So we love passive things where we just bring everybody in a room and let them have at it. But we're also listening to understand what are the problems that are not being solved. And that's where the power of public-private partnership comes to bear. So whether solving it through technology or people, that's where the Institute starts working with our ecosystem, matching federal funds to private investment to solve those challenges, right? We like to say advancing digital innovation and adoption because 10 years into our mission, it's more and more starting to become of not just the innovation, but ensuring that manufacturing adopts this. And on the workforce side, it's upskilling the workforce to empower them to have the ability they need to meet their manufacturers' needs, but also have the careers that they can succeed and really generate that kind of path to the middle class through the manufacturing environment. Right? We're not here about PhDs in engineering. Some other institutes are heavily focused on that because they need that in their technology domain. We're here to say, how do we make the factory workforce more effective? Make sense? Love our members, 300 plus members, anchored by over 20 top tier manufacturers and solution providers. These are really the heart of the Institute, supported by 300 academic institutions, startups, small manufacturers, like-minded nonprofits. The power of MXD, and I would say all the institutes, is bringing this ecosystem together and having them solve the challenges. I always put this slide up. Unfortunately, in DC and in a lot of these conversations, we think about the large manufacturers, the Apple, the Boeings, the Lockheeds. There are 240,000 manufacturers roughly in the US. Less than 2% are considered large, meaning they have more than 500 employees. The 100,000 person companies are a small sliver. I joke, it's a pixel on this slide on the absolute right. In the first 10 years of our mission, we focused heavily on those large manufacturers. We needed them to adopt advanced manufacturing. But as we mature and as we look to the next 10 years, we're trying to uplift the whole ecosystem. How do we uplift all of US manufacturing? 75% of US manufacturing have less than 20 employees. So as I like to say, US manufacturing gets very small, very fast. But if we can uplift them, we can achieve what Stephen is mentioning. 12% right now of GDP comes from manufacturing. To get it to 16, 18%, it's not just about the big manufacturers, it's also about the small and mediums. Okay. Oh, no clicky. All right. Ooh, we got animation. What are they facing as challenges? Manufacturing base in the US is shrinking. Between 2010 and 2020, we lost 20,000 manufacturers. The majority of those were lost in the small manufacturers. Right? It's a challenge we're facing. They're under cyber attacks. Part of the pandemic was manufacturers opened up their work environments to allow people to work remotely. People took advantage of that. It is now the #1 targeted industry since 2021 and remains there ever since, above insurance, finance, banking, everything else. And then on the workforce side, the pandemic caused a growth on this. We recovered a little bit, but still today, there's about 500,000 unfilled jobs in manufacturing. It's predicted because of the fact that 25% of the manufacturing workforce is over the age of 55, that we are going to have this, what they call a silver tsunami. All these folks are going to exit the workforce. We don't know how to fill those gaps. We're predicting 2 million shortfall before the end of the decade. Okay. We're a Department of Defense Institute, so we have to think about their challenges. We're the challenges of the same thing. They've lost 40% of their small suppliers in the last decade. And I love this quote. It's from General Daly. Army Material Command is basically everything the Army buys, makes, uses, comes through AMC at some point. And he quoted the fact that they have a 20th century infrastructure to meet a 21st century need. This, in a lot of ways, reflects U.S. manufacturing. Right? How do we get them to have the 21st century infrastructure to meet the needs of the nation? Public-private works. We have invested with our ecosystem $400 million in advanced manufacturing, just our institute alone. Other institutes that are of the same age or have similar numbers. 194 projects to date. Actually, I think it's 196 today because we keep adding them. Right? Over 60 active projects today. We've upskilled 250,000 people in 10 years. I'm really proud of that fact because there's 250,000 people that know more about advanced manufacturing and digital and cyber than they did before we started working with them. There's still more to do, but that's a great number. 650 members across 10 years. Over 12,000 people come to Chicago to visit our facility. Fun fact, so a young President Obama, his first time he became nationally aware was he participated to support a strike that was happening in our building when it was a window factory, and he went out there to support the workforce. And it was the first time that he received national attention. I don't know if this is true, but I like to say that we launched the career of a president. So, now it wasn't MXD at the time, but it's a great story of how we took a factory that was shut down and vacant and turned it around and made it into a vibrant facility. We do a lot of big projects. Like we've done projects that help like large manufacturers. I'm gonna be like Mike. I'm not gonna name anybody because then somebody might get offended. Large manufacturers solved a problem in their factory floor, and it provided them over $1 million of annual savings just from one production cell. And they have 20 of these across the world, right? So these are material impacts. We're doing a project that's looking at fatigue-related injuries, which affects 50% of the workforce have experienced that. It costs the US economy $136 billion a year. So how do we use sensors, computer vision, AI to identify those injuries before they happen so that we can keep the workforce healthy? Those are the big ones. We love talking about those. Huge numbers, big impact, everybody gets excited. This is one that's even more exciting. We challenged our team internally to go find a way to help a small manufacturer with a light investment have a material impact on their business. So we built what's called the MXD sensor kit. It's a little box, you have inputs, outputs, stack lights, computer screen on it, does some smarts inside of it. Here's an example of how it worked. Our team walked into a manufacturer that cut metal. When you cut metal, you use oil. They skim the oil to reuse it, so we're not just throwing all this oil out. They have to skim all the metal cuttings off of it. Because they had a lot of different, what's called high mix, low volume, a lot of different things cutting, their pumps would kind of get clogged randomly because they couldn't predict it. Temperature sensor, current sensor, and a little light that goes from green, yellow to red. Now I'm simplifying it. Now on shift changes, if it goes to yellow, they clean the pump. If it stays in the green, just keep going. $1,400 pump, 4 hours to replace it. Think about a small manufacturer. That is material impact. They would lose a pump a month across their facility. They haven't lost the pump since. So it's not only about the big investment, the big return. The small investment has a real return. We're working with 100+ manufacturers to implement these kits in their facilities to show them that for less than $1,000 of hardware and less than a day of investment, you can have a material impact on your business. Right? That's the power of digital. We're the National Center for Cybersecurity and Manufacturing. We're a little unique in that we actually have two focuses, digital manufacturing and cybersecurity. It is two sides of the same coin. If you're going to adopt digital, you have to be cyber secure to protect your assets, right? That's why for us, we look at it as one coin, two sides. We're here really to raise awareness. Number one risk is your people. If they know what they need to do, you actually reduce your risk. We're here to give them the tools and services. Most of those are actually free tools that the federal government invests in and provides. They just don't know about it. So how do we share that information? Focus on the people. And we're not here to create new cyber standards. NIST has provided guidelines that work. The Department of Defense has guidelines. Let's just get those guidelines in the hands of the people that need them and teach them how they can actually adopt them to secure their operations. This is a great program that our team has pulled together. We had Rolls-Royce approach us and say, we're concerned about our supply chain and their cyber readiness. And so we built a program together that worked with up to initially 600, but then 2,000 of their suppliers. And it was primarily awareness building. Like I said, tell them, hey, here's the issue. Here's what you need to do. Here's how you assess what your risk is. Here's how you start closing that risk. Since then, this year, we've brought on another manufacturer, and we have 2 more that are coming online this year. We're at 22,000 suppliers that we speak to every month and communicate information around cybersecurity right now. We're hoping to get to close to 30,000 by the end of the year. So when we start talking about uplifting all of that manufacturing supply chain, this is the way to do it. Work with the tier 1 members to partner with them to support their supply chain. But this is the value of the institutes as we mature, is to scale that impact. Workforce, I mentioned 250,000 people. Ashley Watson is messaging you.
Sorry.
Yeah, Ashley's ahead of people in culture. That's definitely one you don't want to ignore. 250,000 people, how did we do it? We worked with industry, academia, and the government to identify the future of work for digital and cybersecurity. Over 400 roles and all the skills that are related to those roles. And then we work with our academic partners and a little bit with industry partners to create micro-learning courses. 60 hours of training material that leads to a certification. And then we run those courses, whether in person or virtually. The piece that's interesting about this is, here's some programs that are kind of real solving problems. Capital. We had federal funds that came through congressional appropriations to fund a program that identified the most critical roles facing manufacturing that are not, skills aren't there and the staff isn't there. And then we work with our partners to build that content. And we own the copyright to this content so that we can actually give it to all the community colleges for them to run these programs locally. Workforce here, that challenge of the 2 million, we're not going to solve it with traditional means. So 1 in 4 Americans identify as disabled. 1 in 4. They have some of the highest unemployment rates, up to 60%, depending on which types of disabilities. We're working with a program that actually sponsored through Department of Defense Mantech program. Keith is the director of that program. He's here in the audience. That basically said, okay, how do we use technology to create opportunities for these folks to find jobs in manufacturing? We did the first course, the first program in here, we realized, well, just because they have the skills, the manufacturers aren't ready to realize I can employ these people. Here's how I have to think about accommodation. So we did a follow-on program that actually trained the manufacturers as well, and then actually paid for an internship. So technology, teach the people, show them how they can work in manufacturing. Go show the manufacturers this is how you can take advantage of these. And now, not advantage, that's a very bad choice of words, how you can leverage this community to really meet your needs and then ultimately prove it out by funding it. We're seeing manufacturers say, how do I get more folks? How do I expand this program? Because there is a real shortage in manufacturing skills. Organic industrial base, for those that don't know, is the Department of Defense's internal manufacturing, maintenance, and repair facilities, right? We all know about Ukraine. 155 shell production is mostly produced in-house by the Department of Defense. That's part of what's called the OIB. So how is MXD supporting this? We're considered a neutral party, right? Because we're a public-private partnership, we're not selling anything to the government when we come in there. So we, individually, but also in partnership with some of the other institutes, have gone into these facilities to go assess their operations, to identify where the opportunities are for advanced manufacturing, to guide and support them. And then we've actually piloted technology programs that help them de-risk their investment. Nobody follows the news here. The Department of Defense, through Army, has announced an $18 billion modernization program. $18 billion is a lot of money. Everybody's trying to sell them something now. I told them it was the worst thing you could have done was announce that number. We're trying to help them make sure that you're investing the dollars in the right place at the right time. So for example, on Friday, our team is visiting one of the 155 production sites to go give them some independent view on what they're working on. And so this is real impact because the problems we're solving in manufacturing outside of the Department of Defense are the same problems they're facing inside. So it's leveraging this investment, maximizing it. I like to give big targets to the team. So last year, we went through our every 5-year renewal with the Department of Defense. We passed with flying colors. So we're at Defense Institute for another 4 years. I set some targets. So how do we go and have 10,000 manufacturers that we've directly helped and improved their operations? Now you heard about the supplier program. I think this number is going to get blown out of the water, but a year and a half ago when we set this target, people were a little stressed out. How do we go from 250,000 to 1 million to really have an impact on the 13+ million workforce? And then finally on the last side is have a material impact on the organic industrial base. That's the targets we've set. So that's MXD. Hopefully gives you a flavor. It's hard to cram 10 years of success into a few minutes, but it hopefully gives you a taste of what we've done. So thank you, everyone.
All right, good morning. So I want to add my thanks to all of you for taking some time out this morning, as well as to ITIF for organizing this. Again, my name is Kelvin Lee. I'm the director of NIMBLE, the National Institute for Innovation and Manufacturing Biopharmaceuticals. We are very fortunate, as are many other people around the world, to have access to medicines. They can be over-the-counter medicines, things that we might take because we have seasonal allergies, maybe we're not feeling well, so we need a little pain relief, or perhaps you have a chronic disease, or you have some other acute disease, or you're in a hospital setting, you have access to those medicines. What a lot of people don't realize is our access to medicines is regulated not only by the FDA, but it's regulated based on how those medicines are manufactured, and there's two very different pathways. One pathway is a pathway where medicines are manufactured using chemistry. There's a particular molecule that somebody wants to make. Somebody synthesizes that using chemical steps. You can characterize exactly what you've got. You can approach the FDA or other health authorities around the world. They will say, yes, this molecule is safe and efficacious and does what it's supposed to do. And anyone who makes that molecule, perhaps after a period of market exclusivity, can bring that medicine to market and sell it. We don't work in that space. We work in the space of much more complicated molecules. We would call them large molecules, as well as vaccines, cell therapies, gene therapies, things where we just don't know enough chemistry to manufacture that medicine, but we can leverage the power of biotechnology to manufacture that medicine. So how are those regulated? Why are they regulated differently? Well, while we know a lot of biotechnology, we don't know enough chemistry, we don't know all the details. So when you approach the FDA or other health authorities around the world and you say, I know how to make this thing and I can make it the same way every single time, you describe to the agency every last detail about your manufacturing method and process and vendor supply chain and every last detail. And you say, if I do this series of steps and I'm testing it every single step along the way, then I have confidence that what I'm making is going to be safe and efficacious for the patient. And if the agency agrees, they will say, great, you have a license to manufacture. We're not approving the final product. We're giving you a license to manufacture. And by the way, we can revoke that license at any time. And if you want to change anything about your manufacturing process, you'll just have to come back to us and get approval for that, no matter what it is that you want to change. And of course, there's 100+ health authorities around the world. And so this creates a little bit of risk aversion inside this industry. So the industry, which is very much driven by speed to market, I've got a new indication, I've got a new medicine I want to bring to market. Now they're thinking about, well, I have to detail everything about my manufacturing approach. What if I've got a better way to manufacture my medicine? What if I've got a better assay? What if I've got a better just pH probe to put into my bioreactor that's making this medicine or vaccine or other therapeutic product? Well, if I've got a new technology, I'm going to have to convince the health authority that it works the way as expected. I might have that data, but if I've made the decision to employ that new technology into my manufacturing process and I approach the health authority to say, will you approve this or not? If the health authority says, oh, we have a simple question. We just want to see a little data. Does it work under these conditions? You say, yes, we've got that data. Everybody's good. If you've cost yourself, your organization, 1 week time to market, and your product is worth $1 billion a year, $2 billion a year, and you're the one responsible for making that decision, we like to say, the only thing you know is you're going to lose your job. So companies want to be obviously fast to market. Speed to market is really paramount to them. It's also an industry, by the way, that has a very big investment in R&D, as you can imagine. About 20% of net revenues are reinvested back into R&D and new products. That's, I think, the highest fraction of any industry. 33% of all global R&D in the biopharma industry is done right here in the United States. We discover a lot in the United States. And the U.S. workforce in biopharma, 25% of those jobs are STEM jobs. So these are very high quality, high paying jobs. But as was alluded to earlier in other contexts as well, we tend to invent a lot of stuff here, and then we tend to manufacture it somewhere else. So the biopharma industry, the use of biotech, that industry really only emerged in the 1980s. That was kind of when it was invented, and we were making a lot of medicines, we were discovering them, and we were exporting them around the world, trade surplus. But then over time, since about 2000, we've been in trade deficit. We are importing these kinds of medicines and to the tune of about $90 billion a year. And we're importing them from our friends, Ireland, Singapore, the UK, Germany. And so I think there's a real opportunity. There's a real opportunity as we think about innovation in this space, about improving US resilience, better control over our supply chains. You know, you think about something as simple as a hurricane or a couple of them that went back to back. there were 57 factories in the path of that hurricane that are providing medicines in the US that were the sole source for our supply of medicines. You can read in the news about challenges with IV saline solutions right now because of hurricanes. So I think there's a lot more that we could do to improve our public health and to improve our overall security, as well as our economic competitiveness. So companies that we work with, they never want to be first with a new manufacturing technology. In fact, they'll proudly tell you, we never want to be first. We want to be at best a fast second. It's even better if we're like 8th or 9th. Several other companies have shown and gotten a shared understanding, is the polite terms, for a new technology. So what do we think about for NIMBLE? We think about NIMBLE as a way to collaborate so that everybody can go first together. It's a shared understanding. It's a way for the major manufacturers to work with major suppliers, to work with small company suppliers, to work with academics, and to work with government scientists to develop that shared understanding of innovative approaches to do the manufacturing to improve our access to medicines. So we have, of course, a lot of companies, we have a lot of suppliers, we have academics, federal scientists, community colleges, all working together like the other institutes. We have a pretty healthy membership, 200 or so plus members, about 150 projects that we've executed in the range of $1 to $3 million of trying to advance the technology and mature the technology to ultimately see it be adopted in the commercial environment. And we've also been fortunate with well in excess of a 2-to-1 private sector co-investment along with our public investment. And we've run a number of programs. We've certainly focused on workforce as well as the other institutes do as well. In particular, we were hearing a lot of calls from our industry around not only the need for workers, and I want to echo Bernardino's point, this is often about people in manufacturing operations, right? It's not necessarily the R&D workforce that's important. Frankly, there are other avenues to pursue that and other resources for that. We are very much focused on manufacturing operations. We think about that as the blue-collar STEM jobs. And one of the initiatives we have is really around taking very successful training programs that have been created by funding from us that we've seen have worked well in certain environments, and now trying to replicate that across training test beds at minority-serving institutions around the country. We also recently finished an action plan for those of who work in kind of biodefense. There's a lot of conversations around the 100-day mission. How do we, in the face of a future public health threat, there's actually a global mission towards how do we develop access to medical countermeasures and vaccines within 100 days of knowing that there is a public health threat. We've developed now a new plan to support the identification of what technologies are really needed, what are the innovations needed in order to help realize that 100-day mission. Some of the other technologies we've worked on are just kind of really nuts and bolts things. There's a lot of liquids that flow around these manufacturing facilities. We developed a way to streamline and organize how that fluid is managed inside facilities, shrinking what is effectively a very large clean room environment, allowing companies to save about $55 million of CapEx investment per factory and another couple $1 million of operational costs every single year through some automation and some novel technologies. We've certainly also helped small companies that are bringing new technologies and analytical tools to the market. One small company that was based in California had a new way to measure product quality that was much faster than the traditional approaches. And they were not only demonstrated their technology, but matured, and then they were eventually acquired by a very large global supplier. So they were very happy. And another small company developing a different analytical tool to tell you what was happening inside the bioreactor in near real time. They actually IPO'd just a couple of years ago, and they've been also very happy. And then the final thing I'll just mention is that we have a working relationship not only with NIST, who's our primary sponsor, but also with a number of other federal agencies, including collaborations with the Food and Drug Administration. And in partnership with them, we help maintain and disseminate, well, for those who are in the space, a DNA sequence database, a nucleic acid sequence database of all the known adventitious agents, things that you don't want in medicines that are going to get injected into your body. And we're pretty confident when we say that every single dose of COVID vaccine that anyone has taken or monoclonal antibodies during the pandemic and probably everything since has relied on access to that database. And so we see our role as not only supporting the companies, but it's also a public health mission in addition to our economic competitiveness. And one thing that I just want to reflect on maybe in my last minute here is, the successes that we've had, and I think the successes that you've heard from LIFT and MXD and the other 14 institutes who aren't necessarily speaking today. Our success is built over not only a range of technologies, a range of investments of time and energy and brain power from people like you in the room, but it's also occurred over 3 different administrations. And I think as we look forward to continued success of the program over the next administration as well. It's a great network to be a part of. We collaborate with our sister institutes on a range of topics and ideas. And I think that power of collaboration is also something I just want to emphasize in my last minute. So thank you so much for your time.
Okay, so you're going to hear from a different side first. And first, I want to thank Steve and ITIF for inviting me to speak this morning, seeing as how I'm also a member of their board and the preeminent technology innovation think tank. Also, the past Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the former director there, and have been actually a past manufacturer. So what I'm going to give you is just short and sweet, a perspective from a former small manufacturer to all of the passionate folks about manufacturing and the passionate policymakers out there, and the millions of viewers on YouTube as well who are watching this morning. Thank you again for listening to the wonderful accomplishments from the institutes who are here today, and the ones who aren't here, you should get to know them. Manufacturing.gov, I believe you can go and learn a little bit more about it. My perspective is from, as I said, manufacturing, but also from a policymaker for several different programs. And it's important that you understand, first of all, that it's not just men that are involved in manufacturing. There are women, lots of women involved in manufacturing. So I'm happy to be a part of the panel so I can say, yes, we too share in this. And so recognize that we are part of this ecosystem as well. What you have here with the institutes and why we're celebrating is the 10 years that this organization has come on as a wonderful idea that has come to fruition, that's come out and been implemented by these wonderful people of the institutes. But they, as none of us, do anything alone. There's about 8 billion people on this planet, and we're here to work together. And there are, I think, about a couple of thousand people involved in the institutes, as well as in my favorite program, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program, our national network who works with these institutes. I want to tell you a little bit of the story of how sort of my perspective comes into play here. I was there the first day DMDII opened up with Secretary Penny Pritzker out there, and I was walking the halls. It was lots of celebration, beautiful facility. And I came across what I call one of the usual suspects, Dean Bartles, who's still connected somehow with the institutes. And he had an idea that I thought was halfway there, and I was going to bring it to a little bit more there. His idea was, why can't the MEP director give money to the institutes so that we could work closer with the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Centers? And I thought it was a great idea, except for we couldn't give money to the institutes, but we would give funds and come up with a program to help the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Centers and the institutes work better together. There's a lot of synergy there between the programs. You look at technology readiness levels versus manufacturing readiness levels and how they come together and can be complementary in terms of working together. And you also look at the various different models. The institutes are set up on a membership model. The MEP centers are set up on a fee to the companies that they come in and serve. And so what you have is organization there that understands at the very, I would say, the single pixel part of the manufacturing picture. And then someone's looking, an organization that looks at the future of where it could be, what it could grow into. And we came together at a great time 10 years ago. If you think about it, it was when the larger manufacturers were really into advanced manufacturing, but the smaller manufacturers, which make up, as Bernardino told you, many more manufacturers out there, were lagging a little bit behind. So having at that time, about a 30-year-old program coming together with a brand new sort of fresh look at bringing in advanced technology into the manufacturing area really was something special. And looking at it now, 10 years later, you see what could come of it. Unfortunately, the funding that they could have gotten, and I'm speaking to the policymakers out there, they didn't get, but they were able to still get funding from their host organizations and from their members to continue and to do a lot of great work. Also with the MEP centers, we needed some infusion of funding as well, which we got, which it could still get more. But with that, you're having a little bit less than a spreading of funds across two great programs that could work together to help the manufacturers. So what I'd like to leave you with, because I just have a very short presentation, is that one of the important things that Bernardino mentioned when he came up and gave his presentation is that there are 240,000 manufacturers out there. When I started as the MEP director in 2015, there were 350,000 manufacturers. We've lost a lot of manufacturers, and we have not gotten them back. And what these two programs together can help is to start to bring back the fabric of the manufacturing ecosystems that we have in this country. We need each manufacturer that leaves or merges, leaves a space that the larger manufacturers do feel. They don't have as large of supply chain as they could have had with things made in the U.S. You have some areas, like even right now, IV fluids. There's manufacturers of IV fluids in this country that are very, very few. And they're, as they go out or as they go out of the country and produce things elsewhere, it makes a whole. And so it's not just what we're doing now that makes a difference, but it's what we're doing towards looking at the future, which is why I feel the institutes are such an important part of this. And I will put in just a tiny little plug for one of my favorite institutes, but I won't say it's my favorite. I happen to sit on the board of MXD, which is foundational, and understand how much that they work with all of the other institutes and also with the MEP centers. They do have formal partnerships with the MEP centers, and we're hoping to get that with all of the institutes. So with that, I'll let you hear from industry. Yeah. Thank you.
Folks, before we begin, I want to first say thank you to American manufacturers and to the manufacturing institutes for what they do. When I was in Iraq in 2003, right after the invasion, the one thing that my soldiers and I had was confidence in our equipment and how important that is to know that we had the very best equipment in the world protecting us in this very difficult mission we were facing. from the body armor that I wore, to the weapon that I carried, to the vehicle that I rode around in, and even the shelter I slept in, was because of American innovation, American ingenuity, and American manufacturers. So when you see someone in the airport and you see a soldier and you say, thank you for your service, please know that we are also extraordinarily thankful for what the American people do and what the American manufacturing system does to protect us as we go into harm's way. And so after 25 years in the military, I just want you to know how much and how important and how personal advanced manufacturing is. It's easy to get lost in technology, but please understand these are real world things that people need to defend our freedom and to protect our homeland. And so on behalf of all of us who have served and all of us who will serve, thank you for what you do to support it. And thank you for the institutes for what they do to advance our understanding of making things faster and at a high level of quality, because people's lives depend on it. I'm Greg Bowman on behalf of our CEO and our entire leadership team, John Ustica and our Barbara Humpton, our Siemens USA CEO. We are thrilled about the opportunity to talk about what our great manufacturing institutes do and why we as industry participate. If you remember anything that I say today, I ask you to remember three things. It's about speed of innovation, scale of production, and strength of workforce. That's why we participate in this. As noted earlier, the manufacturing institutes really are one of our nation's most vital public-private partnerships. Berardino mentioned that, as did Joe. But it's more than just a public-private partnership. This is an American partnership. We kind of get lost on who brings the money and who brings the technology, but in the end, it's Americans driving innovation to support our national interests, whether it's economic or national security. Moreover, the great thing about manufacturing, especially to industry, is that we are seeing now, especially since the pandemic, an effort to treat national preparedness on the same level as national security. And we need to think about that as a nation, and that's what these manufacturing institutes do. They think about ways we can innovate faster, we can scale up production quicker, and we can strengthen our workforce so that we are able to get a preparedness level so that when we don't know what's coming next, when we don't know what the next threat might be, or what the next pandemic might be, or the next economic crisis might be, we are prepared for it. Because we can't predict, we have to be prepared. And that's the great thing about this. It's the marrying up of security with preparedness. These really are the backbone of America's strategic maintenance of global leadership in advanced manufacturing. And they do this by bridging the gap between ideas and innovation and commercialization. An idea is great, but if you can't turn it into a real life thing, then it doesn't go very far and it doesn't help very much. These great leaders figure out a way to bridge what is euphemistically called the valley of death. When you got a great idea, you want to make it happen, you don't have the funding, you don't have the expertise, but you got a great idea. The great thing about the institutes, whether it's a large business or small business, whether it's a person in their garage or a brilliant PhD from a top manufacturing company, these folks bring them together and allow that collaboration to develop into a real world product to meet the needs of America, not just in the defense world, but also in the economic and commercial world. So let's look at this from an industry's perspective. Why does Siemens care? Why does industry care about these manufacturing institutes? I mean, think about it. Here we are, a large company going into and spending millions of dollars to create not just a technology showcase at these great institutes, but a collaboration center where we are working on real world problems with other companies. How often do you see that? I mean, if you know anything about American companies, we are very competitive. And I can tell you the idea of coming together in an institute where you can collaborate, not just compete, where you can work together to solve a common problem. You say, why would Siemens do this? Why would any large-scale manufacturer do this? It's because we know that good ideas come from everywhere, and we want to be a part of that. We want to be a part of the solution. We want to be able to work together with others so we can create something that we couldn't create by ourselves. That's the exciting thing about MXD. That's the exciting thing about LIFT. That's the exciting thing about the other 15 different manufacturing centers around the country, is it gives us that ability to collaborate. You know, what we've done at LIFT and MXD is a strategic decision for us. We've provided advanced manufacturing software at MXD. At LIFT, we've installed one of the top manufacturing lines that we have, so we can show and work with other companies and also with our customers to develop everything from the idea that's created digitally all the way through to the development and manufacturing of that product. And we can demonstrate to them how you can do it in an integrated system. So say, for example, I'm a soldier out in the field, and I think, wouldn't it be great if we had this? That soldier can provide that idea to his leadership or her leadership, and they can then use the digitalization that's created through the work at MXD, develop it with the products that Siemens or other manufacturers use, and then at LIFT actually manufacture that thing and see how it works. The speed of doing that across these different ecosystems is just unmatched. And that's why we invest at these manufacturing institutes. But it goes further than that. As Bernardino said, cybersecurity is absolutely essential. As we drive to get more things done faster, the ability to do that with a digital tool set and with a flexible manufacturing system requires a secure ecosystem. And we are really thrilled about the opportunity to participate in developing the standards and the methods by which we protect our IT systems and also our operational technology systems. Vitally important work that's being done by MXD and LIFT. But these aren't isolated success stories with these two great institutes. We also work very closely with America Makes, the first manufacturing institute that has revolutionized the way 3D printing is done, helping small companies be able to transition from prototyping into full-scale production. The Advanced Robotics and Manufacturing Institute has developed some of the solutions that make autonomy and robotics accessible to small and medium-sized businesses. Folks, I grew up in a town to this day, actually a county to this day, that doesn't have a stoplight in the entire mass of the land. Nothing. No stoplight. It had one factory when I was growing up until that factory closed. And the impact on that community was extraordinary. To see the population just go down and go down and go down because you have to go where the jobs are. MXD and LIFT are creating ways to democratize manufacturing around the country. What they are doing is about jobs, it's about success, and it's about giving back the power of manufacturing to small businesses, to medium businesses, but also to small and medium communities where these jobs can have extraordinary impact. That's what they're doing. Now, from a government perspective, why does the government care about this? I mean, I spent a good chunk of my life in government, now in business. And why they care about this is because it gives them access to this collective capacity to understand and the brains and the power behind it. But simply put, folks, thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for what MXD and LIFT do. Thank you for your support of advanced manufacturing. Siemens is committed to continuing to drive and support these innovations. And as you look at this, I really want you to think of the Manufacturing USA Institutes as more than just a facility or a program. They represent American ingenuity at its best, American collaboration at its best, and they are able to produce speed of innovation, scale of production, and strength of a workforce that's going to make our nation and our economy stronger. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Greg, and to all of our great speakers. I think when technology policy scholars look back in 30 years, they're going to say that Manufacturing USA was the most significant addition to America's technology, science and technology ecosystem, in the past half century. So, and I shudder to think where our country would be in manufacturing if we didn't have Manufacturing USA and the Manufacturing Extension Partnership doing the great work we heard about today. All right, let's take a few questions from the audience quickly while we have about 10 minutes left. If there are any, please raise your hand and say who you're with. While you think about your questions, we have received several online that I can start with. So here are two I'll put up together and because they're related. One, what actions are being taken so that AI in manufacturing avoids adverse impacts and promotes positive benefits for manufacturing workforces and communities? And what strategies are the institutes employing to fight the awareness gap versus skills gap to inform younger people about opportunities in manufacturing?
I'll start with this, and artificial intelligence is an extraordinarily strategic and disruptive technology, as we are seeing. You've seen really another whole of government with the Secretary of Commerce assigned a leadership role with that. And this is why NIST has launched the AI Safety Institute, the AI Consortium, and we are underway to establish a full-size institute on AI for resilient manufacturing. But really, it's so broad and diverse. AI is a technology that is being used and leveraged by multiple institutes. In particular, we got a call out from the ARM Institute, Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing. And really, as they are applying flexible automation, robotics technology, the way that they are really increasing the efficacy of that is by using artificial intelligence and adaptive controls in how it's used. It really is transformational to productivity and to ensuring quality.
I'll touch on the awareness question. All of us have in our charters to advance technology and to advance the next generation workforce for advanced manufacturing. So each of us as institutes do that. That's why this month, October, Manufacturing Month. So all of us celebrated Manufacturing Day, whether it's National Manufacturing Day, the first Friday in October, or someday thereafter at our Puerto Rico facility. We're hosting some students later on this week. But, you know, we just our Detroit area, we've made outreach to 5,500 middle and high school students to show them what advanced manufacturing looks like. We've had about 38,000 students participate in at least one of our Ignite Mastering Manufacturing classes around the country. So we are trying to do everything we can to reach down into those younger students, because before they start making decisions about what they want to do as a career, we've got to show them what advanced manufacturing looks like. It may not be the vision that they have in their head. It may not be the stories that they've heard, but it's digital. It is, it looks like video game. It looks like a video game in some circumstances. So to be able to show them what it looks like in the year 2024 is important. I know all of us take those activities very seriously.
Yeah, and I don't know if these mics are even working, but I'll just talk loud. So in addition to all the same work that we're doing, one piece I highlighted, I talked about the hiring guides that we built with industry, academia, and government. In 2017, we launched the first version of it. There was an AI ethicist as a role for manufacturing that was identified back then. So, common thought is there today, but industry and academia and government recognized the need for this back then. And we're working to get those type of roles and the skills development around it be available for people to take the courses and training so that they can fill those jobs as they expand into the market.
Great. Any questions from our audience? If you would just state your name and the organization you're with.
Christina Floresveld with UIUP. So Greg referenced the manufacturing collaboration centers. And I think every single one of you referenced the bringing together of government funding with academic partners at all levels, companies, et cetera. And increasingly, those cross-sector partnerships are getting a lot of attention to drive innovation ecosystems and drive workforce development. And so my question to all of you, because you've seen so many successes through your program, what are some of those successes or kind of lessons learned that you think might be able to be translated to other industrial sectors or to the new manufacturing institutes that are proposed and going to be launched? And also, what are maybe some opportunities and changes that maybe you suggest in terms of structuring public-private partnerships based on this long legacy that you've all witnessed?
I'll try to answer that. And you're right, I've seen all kinds of things that work and things that don't work. It's This is a business of people, and having the right people in place who understand that whatever you're going after has to be shared. Whatever you're going after has to be measured. You can't just say, oh, we would like. Well, what exactly? Give us a picture. What is the specific goal? When you have things, when you're coming together to collaborate, I always say cash, credit, and control. So you got to have the right funding. You got to give, and when I say credit, I mean bragging rights. Everybody has to be recognized as part of this. And then control, there has to be an agreement, an understanding of who will step up at this point, who will step up at that point. Because if everybody's stepping up at one point and nobody's stepping at another point, you're not going to get what you need to get done. So that is as old as time. Speaking from the little old lady here on the panel, but it's foundational. It is foundational. It has to be shared, and there has to be agreement in advance of you getting started as to what you'd like to do.
I just want to add a little bit of perspective. So we have the benefit of not being number 1, 2, or 3 of the institutes launched. And so I actually think we benefited a lot that there were other institutes that came before us, and where there were maybe some lessons learned, where some of those best practices certainly helped us get going a little faster. One of the things that we have observed, though, maybe it falls under the lessons learned, but it certainly is about people, is at least in our tech space, there had been such a longstanding divide between the state-of-the-art knowledge of what was going on in academia, who are key stakeholders in our ecosystem, and the state-of-the-art understanding of what was possible from the industry side. And most people think about, and I typically think about, well, when it comes to technology, academia is usually ahead, but in our space, it was actually industry that was very far ahead and had different ways of thinking and doing business. And so as we brought the community together, it was not only bringing people into the room to talk about innovation and technology and ideas, but it was sometimes as simple as, how do you define what a successful project is? What does success look like for you? Where a lot of the academic community that maybe were funded by certain government agencies that do great work, their view of a project was one that would go on 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and then you retire. And obviously in the corporate world, it's a very different paradigm to think about what is a project and what is a timeline and how do you measure success. And just talking about culture and talking about differences and trying to bring people together to get them on the same page, even outside of technology, is one of the things that I think we have seen to be really important to enable teams to be performing effectively as collaborators.
So NIMBLE was the first industry really initiated institute, as I understand. The others really came out of processes from Department of Defense and Department of Energy. When we wrote this report back in 2012, we identified 45 potential areas where we could launch a Manufacturing USA Institute. Our friends in China have actually launched over 40 now. Interesting that they copied our first, I believe, 14 Institute for Institute. So I want to ask the question for policymakers and tech policy scholars. Where do we go from here? What's the right number? I kind of like the 30 by 2030 idea. I don't want to add too much work to Mike's plate, but I think more can be done in this great set of programs. How should we think about what other areas of technology we might build in the future? And how industry and policymakers should think about the value we are adding and where we can add additional value elsewhere. And I know y'all can't necessarily ask the Hill for something per se, but want to hear your perspectives on how we might think about that process from a technology policy perspective.
Well, I'd like to briefly comment that yes, we are blessed or cursed with lots of opportunities where this model, not every problem needs or can optimally be solved by a public-private partnership convening and such. So let's not think that this is the best way to do everything. But the calculus here is once you create this neutral convening ground where even direct competitors can collaborate, where people rub shoulders, where it's really extraordinary. In my industry career, working with Sandia National Labs or a university, great, but working with multiple universities, multiple companies, it just doesn't happen. And what they've done is they've created a place where it's mass collaboration. It's a contact sport. S&T and engineering and manufacturing, it's a contact sport, right? And so my answer to that is we don't have a stated goal, but of the opportunities, we have a quadrennial national strategic plan for advanced manufacturing. There are 18 advanced manufacturing priorities, technology priorities, and most of them have an institute. The two newest institutes are going off that list. So I would say, as the model works, we want to have this as industry pull, but as the model works, we are still in the place where we have some national advanced manufacturing priorities that we believe would be well served, that would be augmented with a public-private partnership, industry-focused innovation institute.
I think maybe to add a perspective as President Institute, what we have to be careful of is diluting the investment, because if we put too many institutes where it just becomes like, okay, we take 10% of this topic and we throw it into a new institute, we don't benefit from the investment that's been done to date. And so I think it's a razor's edge of, okay, let's take the institutes we have and put additional funding so they can expand their mission versus creating new institutes focused on a new need. And I don't envy the government folks that have to figure this out. But space is an interesting one. Should we have a space institute? I could argue yes, I could argue no, because between LIFT and ARM and MXD and America Makes and other institutes that exist already, we're all focused on space manufacturing. So do we invest further in the current institutes? Do we create a space institute, or do we do both? The challenge with doing both, which is probably the right answer, is we need funding. And that's where it becomes a challenge, is we're limited by the amount of funding that's invested.
Great. All right. Well, last chance for questions from the audience. And if not, that's okay, because ITF President Rob Atkinson loves nothing more than an event being on time. I want to write at 10:30, so I'm going to make him very happy today. With that, let me remind everybody to sign the poster. We're going to turn around right after this and take a picture. But before we do that, want to thank our wonderful panelists, want to thank our audience here and online. This video will be up this afternoon for you to share in the future. And we look forward to continuing to collaborate with you all to make Manufacturing USA a success going forward. Thank you.
Can I add one last
Yes, Mike, please
fun
go ahead.
fact? It was 10 years ago as well, another PCAST recommendation about the image of manufacturing. That's why we created National Manufacturing Day. So we are celebrating 10 years of National Manufacturing Day because of that. So
And-
go manufacturing.
And how about this? To Manufacturing USA, 10 years, here.
Yeah.
Here.